Howdy y'all, Luke Crawford here. I've gotten a lot of questions from folks about how I load precision rifle ammo on a progressive press. This is a Dillon 750. And so I'm just going to kind of give a rundown on how I do that. So to start, there's not really any modifications done to the press per se. The biggest difference is that I am running tool heads that basically bolt in. And I'll give you a closer look at all this stuff when we actually go and load some ammo. But basically these tool heads lock in place, unlike the typical free-floating Dillon tool head. And that's kind of a must for consistent overall length and consistent shoulder bump when you're resizing. The only other thing I did is I put a needle bearing on basically between the bolt and the shell plate. That's something I've just always done on all Dillon presses. I think it just makes them run a little smoother. So that's kind of the really the only thing different about this than just your run-of-the-mill Dillon press. So let's say I'm starting with, once fired or new brass. I run it through this tool head first. So basically I start with a decapping die, then I go to a sizing die. This is, I run the RCBS Matchmaster dies. I've been really happy with those, especially for the price. I've experimented with some of the $300-$400 die sets, and I don't think they really do anything that these don't. So we go to the sizing die, and then I have a mandrel from 21st Century. So the cool thing with this tool head is the actual tool head is bolted into the press, but as you can see, the dies wiggle a bit here. And basically the dies are floating individually, and that's what just provides that more consistent OAL and shoulder bump on your brass. So I run everything through this tool head, and I just fill up this case feeder and just sit here and crank the handle and go. It's awesome. Once all my brass has been processed per se, the only thing I'll do in between putting it back in the press is I'll chamfer it if it needs it or trim it if it needs it. But I clean all the once fired or multiple time fired brass before this first tool head, and I don't clean it again. I don't really worry about dirty primer pockets, that kind of thing. I'm not a bench rest shooter. I tend to really like field matches, and I've shot a little bit of PRS, but not much. But I've found that out of my bolt guns, if I can get a consistent half MOA 5-shot group at 100 yards, then I'm happy with that. I can't always shoot that good, but I have shot that good, and those are that's kind of what I'm looking for. So, I'm not looking for bench rest one hole groups. I think if I was pursuing the game of bench press, my loading process would look very different, but I'm not. And to get a half MOA group that shoots as good or better than factory ammo out of a progressive press, I'm very happy with. So then we move on to the second tool head, which only has 2 stations on it. So this is a Dillon powder drop die with the Hornet. It's actually a combination of a Hornady funnel and Area 419 drop tube. And so I drop powder over here on a RCBS Matchmaster, and so I'm still hand dumping powder, which is like the biggest slowdown of this whole process. Like the Dillon powder measures and those kind of things, they just are not consistent enough to get those like sub 10 standard deviations that I like to see. So basically this tool head's simple. I go in here, I drop powder, and then I seat the bullet, and then it pops out in this bucket here loaded, and at that point it's ready to go. It also primes on that second pass through. But I'm going to kind of zoom in now, give y'all a closer look, and we're just going to load one round of ammo just to kind of see how it works. So normally I would have this case feeder filled all the way up and I'd be cranking the handle, but for just to keep things simple for the video, we're just going to run one case through at a time. So we're starting off with our first tool head. This is some, I think, twice fired 223 brass. So when we come up here, it puts our brass into the first station. And then when I pull again, we go into the decapping die, so it just knocked the old primer out. We come back down, and at this point another one would come in. This second station I don't use for anything. Then we come here, we're now full length sizing with a bushing. So we go there, brass is now sized. We come here, brass is now mandreled. And then I don't have anything in that station. And then boom, we now have a what was a twice fired piece of brass that has been deprimed, sized, and mandreled for the perfect neck tension. And this brass, I chamfered it a while ago. It still looks good. So it would now be ready for the second tool head where we're actually going to load it. And that's what we're going to go to now. So just to give you a closer look at these tool heads again. So as you can see, the shell plate is locked in place and the dies are floating, which once again gives you that consistent overall length. So basically to change the tool head, you have to undo these screws, which is a little bit slow, but typically I process all my brass through this first tool head, so I might do like 500 pieces. So I'm really not changing tool heads often, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So now we've taken those screws out. This tool head just slides out. Our second tool head slides right in. And now we put these screws back in. So we have our piece of brass back in the machine here. That's the piece of brass that we just sized, deprimed, all that. So it's going in there. First station's nothing. Then here is where it primes. So as you see, when we get into station 2, I push the handle forward a little bit. That seats a primer. And then at that point, I come up here and I leave the handle down, and that piece of brass is now in this this basically funnel system. At that point, we're going to come over here and grab our powder that just came off of the RCBS Matchmaster. We're going to dump it, and then I always like to just give it a little wiggle. I don't think that's really necessary, but that just kind of makes sure everything is flowing through there. So the biggest slowdown in all of this loading on a progressive is the powder. I've explored some options like some of the Prometheus machines, and I even saw a guy that's working on mounting essentially a Prometheus up above here, but that just is going to cost a fortune. So as of right now, I run one RCBS Matchmaster, and that'll drop a charge about every 15 seconds. So my plan is to buy another, so then I'm only having to wait, 6.5 seconds between every time, because that would greatly speed things up. So our case is primed. It just got the powder in it. So then it comes down, it rotates. I would prime the next case, and then I would leave it here, dump powder for the next case, but we're just running one. So now it comes up into this empty station, which you can just see it poking out there, which works great to drop the bullet in. So then we come back down, and then we come up here into our bullet seating die. You'll be able to hear it because we're crunching some Shooter's World Precision. All right, so now we have a loaded round of ammo, and it's gonna come around here, up to another empty station, and out here. Here is that loaded round of 223 ammo. I typically get SDs with this in the high single-digit range, sometimes into the low teens, kind of that 8 to 12 range, which I'm very happy with, especially for the time that you have to put into this versus the time of loading on, an arbor press or single stage and all that kind of thing. Once again, like I mentioned earlier, I love to shoot. I reload to shoot. I don't shoot to reload, as some people would say. And I think this is a huge time saver for cranking out some really good high quality ammunition. It shoots great. The whole kind of video I know was pretty brief. I didn't get into stuff like setting up dies and how these Armanov tool heads work and that kind of thing. There's other videos on that kind of stuff. I just wanted to kind of give an overview of the system I use when loading precision ammo on a 750 and what dies I'm using in what order and that kind of thing. So if you have any other questions about this, feel free to let me know. You can comment or find me on social media. I am happy to help as much as possible, and hope y'all have a good one. Thanks.